Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My topic today, as explained by Vijay, is trial and training and recovery strategies. So, I'll be covering certain scientific principles behind trial and training and certain guidelines to be followed, and especially applicable if you are in full swim training schedule. So, the first and foremost question which arises specifically if you are a high performance athlete is, will training help me swim faster? Specifically, athletes who are high performance, who are into high performance swimming, they are already in high volume of swim training. So, before adding an additional dry land training load, it is very imperative for them to know, will dry land help me swim faster? So before we come to an answer to that, let's address the common concerns of dry land training. So first and foremost concern is, will it lead to excessive fatigue and overtraining? So no, like dry land training will only improve your physical fitness and in fact reduces your fatigue scores, rating in your swim training. And if designed properly, it will not lead to overtraining. Second most concern is excessive bulk. Again, the training strategy behind dryland in swimmers is completely different compared to the normal gym goers or bodybuilders, etc. So what you're going to do, focus here is more on building strength and power rather than building muscle mass. Although you'll be gaining certain muscle, the good amount of muscle mass, it won't make you excessively bulky. In fact, it will only make you leaner and improve your body composition. Thirdly, will it lead to loss of aerobic performance? No. Like studies have shown that parallel dryland training will not cause loss of aerobic function. In fact, it will only enhance your performance. So now let's see how dryland improves performance compared to other strategies. So this is a study comparing different strategies which are followed. So if you see, A is using the trial and training. There's the greatest improvement in the group which is doing trial and training compared to second group which is only doing in pull resistance training, and the third group which is only doing supplemental aerobic training. Now again, coming back to the same question, will it help or harm the swimmers? It actually depends on how you train. Certain things are kept to are have to be kept in mind before proceeding with dry land training. First and foremost thing which you have to remember is, you have to focus, the dry land training is focused more on strength, power and mobility and not on cardiovascular conditioning. So because you're already doing a lot of pool work which has a lot of focus on cardiovascular conditioning, you need to limit cardiovascular conditioning sessions in dry land. So traditionally and commonly, dryland program use excessive volume. What I mean by volume is, the rep range is usually more than 12, equal to or more than 12, which is followed, and for a very long blocks of weeks. So more sets, more rep range is will lead to increase in volume with low load. So because swimming is an endurance sport, they think, like it is a common belief that excessive volume, you should focus on more on muscular endurance, and hence the ideology behind excessive volume. But that's not true. In fact, rather, dryland is used to improve your strength and power, and with the strength and power improves only with increase in intensity and less rep range, less volume and increase in the intensity. So, in fact, excessive volume will only make you tired and sore. So, the two major role of talent training is performance enhancement and injury prevention. The next thing is, there are three components of talent training. First and foremost part is talent warm up. Second is strength and power training, and third one is supplemental aerobic training. Now, coming to the first one, so will dry land warm up help me in water or help me swim faster? So again, these are strategies. This is again a study done with different strategies. One, A shows a swim warm up, shows dry land warm up, and third one shows no warm up. So if you see, with warm up, the performance, the red line, the performance is maintained. But if you don't do warm up, the performance drops drastically. So the thing is, the next question arises is, why do we prefer dry land warm up over swim warm up? So during competition, it is commonly observed that warm up pool are often chaotic and crowded. So leaving an athlete either you warm up somewhere else outside the pool, or either you skip the warm up. So as we have already seen, by skipping the warm up, you are reducing the chances of performing better. So why not choose an alternative? Secondly, there's a long gap between warm up and the actual race. So, like the between warm up and the actual race, the 10 to 15 minutes gap is ideal. More than more than 15 minutes to longer periods will only reduce your performance, and duration as long as greater than equal to 45 minutes will definitely impair your performance. Also, the next important thing to consider is swim starts on land. So powerful start is more important, specifically for sprinters. So what are the objectives of warm up? Island warm up. So first and foremost thing is to to mental preparation, or bearing the idea of from sedentary to an physical activity. So enhancing your mental readiness. Second thing is, it elevates your core temperature. Now core temperature can be elevated either by swim warm up or by dry land warm up. So you can achieve this goal by any of the modality. So what's the main goal behind elevating this core temperature is, it enhances your flexibility and certain dry land stroke rehearsal patterns can be done. There can be activation, you can also do activation of certain weak muscles which physio has evaluated you. And certain, if you are prone to shoulder injuries, you can activate certain group of muscles which are weak, which leads to shoulder pain. And so the main goal is, with the warm up, you are providing brief exposure to different energy systems to minimize the shock of high intensity training or competition. So what we include is basic dynamic stretches, certain activation exercises. One additional thing which is commonly of lately noticed is incorporating explosive power based movements like explosive jumps or medicine ball work. So what is seen is, if you incorporate certain power-based movements specifically before your actual race. If you can see, like there's a technology which measures your force. So if you see how the like both vertical force and horizontal force in this case has improved in a swimmer, like from 770, it has the peak force has gone to 814, and from 1462 it has gone to 1518. So the thing is, with if you do a powerful movement, there is a transient memory which is stored in your in the like at the spinal cord level, and which is reused when you're actually racing. So the next I'll be covering next is the common myths which I have commonly encountered in my training years with respect to dry land training. So the first and foremost question which arises is, will resistance training at young age impair child's growth? So the thing is, when it comes to resistance training or weight training, the first thing which comes into the mind is you start imagining heavy weight. But resistance training, the word itself means it is any form of resistance. It can be body weight as well. It can be external or it can be body weight. But so science says that there's no evidence that if you design a proper resistance program, it will lead to delay in optimal growth or lead to injury. So there's no evidence saying that there would be delay in child's growth. In fact, there are certain benefits of engaging into resistance training. So the first foremost thing which you benefit from a good well-designed resistance training program is development of strength, power, better body composition, improvement in overall athleticism, injury prevention. Your self-esteem is boosted, and there's greater opportunity for social interactions. Now, the next question which arises is, when exactly can a child enter into a good, like a proper designed program? Now, the thing is, it's very difficult to put a proper milestone, because every child will develop, development of every child varies slightly here and there. But like in general, a formal resistance, like a good program can be designed. Structured resistance training program can be designed as early as 5 years. Earlier age, you have to incorporate more of body weight, fun-filled, playful activities, focusing more on fundamental movement patterns, strength, agility, and the sport-specific movements. Like you can see, like you focus more from the pictures over here. You focus more on basic agility, jumping, running, pushing, pulling, body weight movements. Now, from this is, although this is a general guideline, you can also, like some kids can mature early and they are ready for formal weight training program as well, like before 12 years. So between age 13 to 20, you are more developed by now, and are more ready towards advanced strength and conditioning sessions, and which you develop a regular and consistent routine. So as you can see, you can start lifting weights as in when you advance. So the important point to remember is, two kids of same age will have different maturity level. While one may be ready for formal weight training program, it is for other it may be safer to stick to body weight training. It doesn't matter whether you're doing a body weight training or formal weight training. uh, it will still lead to improvement. The only thing is, you have to bear and respect maturity levels of each individuals. So next question, which is common question which arises is, will sit-ups and crunches improve my performance? So like, I think most of us are already aware of importance of core training in swimmers specifically, and sit-ups and crunches have been their favorite for a very long time. It's for core training. But before we answer this question is, like, if I ask you to identify the core exercises amongst all three exercises, you'll probably choose first one over second and third. But what if I tell you, like, second and third one are in fact better core training exercises? So the concept of core is highly misunderstood. So what I mean by core is box of muscles formed. If you see over here, there's a box formed by diaphragm on top, pelvic floor on bottom. There is abdominal muscles, superficial and deep at the front, and superficial and deep back muscles. And there are side muscles also. So it's basically a box of muscles which are formed. In fact, core muscles also include certain hip muscles like glutes and all. So, like, yes, proper core strength training will help to protect spine and reduces the chance of low back pain, and improves posture and swim specific movements. But you have to understand that core is not just abs, not just superficial abs, which is like the with sit-ups there's only engagement of superficial abs, but with core training you have to engage overall all the muscle. So in fact, I would say that sit-ups and crunches should be completely omitted from the dial-in program. Why? Because low back pain is the second most common site of injury, followed by shoulder and swimmers. And the repeated spinal flexion at high volume, like hello, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but your we can hear
Hello.
you. We can hear you.
Okay. Okay. So low back pain is the second most sign of concern for swimmers specifically, and repetitive spinal flexion at high volume, like we do in sit-ups and crunches, will only increases your low back pain and not specifically enhance your core strength. So it's not a very good exercise, and specifically for swimmers. So the next thing is, can Drylin plyometrics enhance the performance? So what do I mean by word plyometrics is any jumping and agility exercises. So if you look at jumping pattern, you may not directly correlate it with swimming movement patterns. It is completely different from swimming pattern, and it is often perceived as dangerous exercises. So coming back to this same question, will exercise such as jumping and agility help me swim faster? Again, you can see how the takeoff velocity of an athlete, of a swimmer who is engaging in uh, jumping program is much more faster, and the 5 meter, the glide distance, the time which he takes to glide and turn and flip will become much more lesser, and the performance will improve. So if prescribed well, it will only enhance the performance and improve not only just turns and glides, but in fact, it will also translate to powerful strokes. So the next question arises is we are moving more towards the supplemental aerobic exercises. So the next concern is, will I swim faster if I do supplemental aerobic exercises, like if I bike, run, etc.? So yes, you can incorporate certain aerobic exercises if you're not into full block of swimming cycle. It completely depends from your training schedule, and it sometimes depends from individual to individual. Some may need, some may not need completely. So if specifically if you are into restricted pool hours due to injury or some other reason, then definitely you should fill in with aerobic training. However, you should keep in mind the gap between the strength and aerobic session should be at least minimum of 6 hours. Why? Because you can see from your athlete A is engaging into strength training session only, and sorry, if you see the graphs ABCD, A is the group of swimmers who are engaging into strength training session, B is the group of swimmers who are doing both strength and guard at 24 hours gap. C is the group of swimmers who are engaging into strength and aerobic training but with 6 hours gap, and D is with no gap. So what happens at microscopic level, there are certain changes which happen with strength training, and there are certain different changes which happen with aerobic training. So like, and they should not interfere with each other. It's the reason why you should not incorporate strength and cardio training back to back, and keep a minimum of 6 hours gap, so that you get benefit from both training sessions adequately. Now, when to not incorporate supplemental training, and specifically running and all, if you are already into high volumes of pool training, it is best not to incorporate supplemental aerobic training. Why? Is again to preserve strength gains. If you excessively engage into aerobic training, again it will interfere with each other and will restrict your strength gains. And second is the risk of overtraining. Specifically, swimmers are prone, they are not used to running, and they are at more risk of injury with running and all. Now, next thing is like we are living in an era where measurement has become important. Like with technology and all, it is very, like we can measure everything and anything. So when it comes to dryland, yes, you should be measuring your dryland performance. So what all can be measured? It from like basic functional movement patterns to power movements like vertical jumps to max strength rest and endurance based core test. Everything can
Chetna,
be measured. Now the video is
Chetna,
not
just a
playing, but
second.
anyway. Yeah.
Your voice is cracking. There's a lot of background noise.
Yeah.
You would need to come either a bit closer to the mic, or you can shut your video off and start speaking so that the audio is very clear.
Okay.
Yeah. And once the presentation is over,
Okay.
we could
Okay.
start the video again.
Okay.
Yeah, go.
Hello,
Yes.
can you hear me now? Yeah. So everything can be measured in dryland, from your functional movement patterns to maximum strength to vertical jumps and endurance based core test. Now the next common query is like, what if I'm improving in my dryland but it is not translating to swim? Yes, there are certain stages in development of translating that strength and power to swimming, it takes time. Like you work, there are certain blocks of training which you have to work upon. So after you work upon your maximum strength, you improve your maximum strength, you need to work on translating towards improving your power. That's why it's important to measure all this, so that you know, like, you're not just improving only in one particular aspect, because ultimately what is important for any athlete or swimmer specifically is to improve the power based activity. So improvement in vertical jumps or power based movement is more important compared to improvement in max strength. However, like, it's correlated. So definitely you need to work earlier on your strength, but later on, towards the competition period, you have to work more on your power. So slowly and steadily it will translate towards the swim performance. Now the common rules to remember with dryland training is always train under a certified coach. Your coach which you are training under should be a certified strength and conditioning coach. It could be either NSCA or ASCA certified. Second important rule to remember, it is supplementary to swimming. So you shouldn't primarily focus on dryland and and shift, in fact, reduce the focus on swimming and focus more on dryland. It doesn't work like that. So less is more, in fact. So it is only supplementary to swimming. Do not harm by incorporating extra dryland, because excessive will only harm you. And the last and most important thing to remember is conditioning is not of prime importance, because you are already doing a lot of conditioning work at swimming pool. Now, the next query which arises is, how do we maintain fitness due to this COVID-19 pandemic? So, like, currently, dryland has become primary focus rather than supplementary, because we don't have access to swimming pool. So you can still maintain your fitness following a simple home-based functional training. Thirdly, you can use technology like heart rate monitors and step counters. You should encourage your child to be physically active. Like a step count of, I would say, for an athlete to be bare minimum of 8 to 10,000 is ideal. Like for a sedentary person, 7,000 is minimum. So step count will motivate an athlete to be at least active. And secondly, use of heart rate monitors. Like when in training, they can see their heart rate is jumping up. They are doing an equally intense training with home-based workout. And secondly, you can also monitor your resting heart rate. With resting heart rate, you can see if your resting heart rate is not moving upwards, it means you are still maintaining your conditioning level and you're not moving towards deconditioning. You can do dry run, which is like stroke rehearsal using stretch codes. And also, not like, swimmers don't get off season otherwise. So like, use your this time to work on your weak areas, work on the techniques, mental techniques. You can review the video tapes and uh, practice mental imagery to practice imagery to work on certain strokes patterns which you are weak. Now if you see, I don't know, video is not playing. So basically, if you see, the video shows how we are before pandemic, before COVID, and after COVID, we are still doing power based movements. So basically, although you're not swimming, but you are still maintaining your fitness and power, strength, power through home based workout. So it is not like, don't be excessively worried and caught up upon the fact that you don't have access to swimming pool, and just work upon the basic things which you never got time earlier. Now coming to recovery strategies. Now recovery is purely like, the recovery strategies, the first and foremost rule to remember is, the amount of recovery needed will always depend on your training load. Secondly, which we have already covered in the previous lecture, is sleep hygiene. So sleep hygiene is very important for adequate recovery. In the last lecture, we saw the importance of sleep for recovery and all. So I hope you remember all that. Then certain nutritional strategies to be followed for recovery. Like, 3 times a day, 2 times a day, 3 times a day. 3 times a day, 2 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 times a day. 3 times
Chetna, you're muted. Please press Control D. Chetna, please press Control D. You're muted.
Can't hear you.
Yeah, can you please start now? You are muted. Parth Jain, please mute yourself and shut your video. Please. Chetna, you can start speaking.
Yeah, yeah, just a sec. So immediately post sessions, certain things which can be done for recovery is cool down, following a good.
Chetna, you're muted again. Somebody muted Chetna. Please do not mute others. Chetna, press Control D again. Parth Jain, please shut off your video and mute your microphone. Please do that. Shut off your video and mute your microphone. Otherwise, I'll have to move you out of the meeting.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. So there will be certain recovery days planned in your weekly schedule. Don't skip that. Do not try and place your dryland training in your recovery days. Then there would be recovery massages. Now, I would say again, it depends from person to person. It's not necessary that massage is the only way out, but yeah, it is mostly suited for most of the athletes. Fourthly, there can be one recovery block after 3 weeks of intense training. Again, this depends on your coach to decide. It is not your decision, and it depends on the intensity of your training. The other most important rule to remember is avoid back-to-back competitions. If you don't achieve your PBs, it is only normal to get caught up by participating in back-to-back competitions. So it is not advisable because you don't get enough recovery time between competitions, and it is best to plan your competition calendar in advance and stick to it, unless your coach is suggesting you otherwise. The last most important point is post competition recovery. It depends on what kind of competition you're playing, you're participating in. If the competition is not if your competition is not very not, I don't know, I'm not getting the correct word, but in fact, if it is not one of your major competition, you don't need that much of recovery period in between. 2 to 3 days would be enough. Sometimes you may need as long as 1 week to 1 month. It completely depends from on your next calendar schedule and what kind of competition you're playing in. Again, your coach will be best to help you to plan your recovery, post competition recovery block. Now, these are some of the various recovery strategies and pros and cons of it. So first and foremost one is passive rest. It requires the pro is for the same is it requires minimal effort, but definitely it is not effective for quick recovery. Although you're not doing anything, it is easy way out, but it is not best suited for quick recovery. Second thing is compression garments. Again, it does not require you to take much effort, and specifically, it's good when you're traveling. But again, the cons are it's expensive. You need like a good fitting material, and second, it depends from person tolerance level. Will depend from athlete to athlete, and there are inconclusive data with respect to its effects on recovery. Third strategy which is normally followed is contrast water therapy. Now this works well and is very quick recovery strategy which can be followed, but it needs certain facilities and it is difficult for large squad. Fourth one is very easy to do, free, easy to do, effective, which is active recovery. But sometimes you may miss it because of unavailability of time, or when if you are in competition, you don't have access to pull for recovery. It may happen sometimes. Cold water immersion, again, it is passive and it is effective, but again it requires facility and individual preferences. Like not all athletes would like cold tolerance. Now, this is a study was done to compare swimming versus dry land based recovery methods. Now, if you can incorporate warm ups in dry land, why not do the same thing in cold down? So, like so far, the studies have demonstrated swimming based recoveries are better over dry land based recoveries. But however, the current studies are using only lactate as the recovery marker, which is often considered as a bad guy. So, just because your lactate is high does not mean you are not recovering well. So, like the more, like at this point, more research is needed, and it is swimming recovery is given uh, more weightage compared to dry land based recovery. Now, again, this is a comparison of swim recovery versus muscle stimulation and passive recovery. We were in fact using muscle stimulator machine in one of the athletes. Specifically, this can be used during competition. So, although swim recovery is best, so compared to no recovery or passive recovery, muscle stimulation has also demonstrated good results. So the mode of recovery will completely depend. It's the best recovery method is to do swim down and cool down stretches. However, if you don't have time and access to pool or the other drawbacks which is blocking you from doing all adopting those normal strategies, you can use certain other methods like muscle stimulation and garments. But again, depends on trial and testing. It depends from tolerance from one person. Like it will completely depend person to person. Now, this I'm sharing you the contact details where if any of you is interested in booking an online session for for consultation with me. So basically, I am from the Heath Matthews Physio team, and you can book a consultation online through heathmatthewsphysio.com. And this is my email ID. So currently, we are offering 50% discount on the online consultations. Hello, I'm open to questions if any of you have. Hello.
Any questions, please? You can look at the chat box.
Yeah, I am.
There's only one question right now.
During summer training, water temperature is really high, especially in the evenings. The muscles tends to relax, numb, not enabling me to put full effort. How can I avoid muscles to relax? Again, like a high temperature should not, in fact, should facilitate muscle activity. And I would suggest you to do a good warm up before you, specifically if you're working at the extreme temperatures which you're not used to training otherwise. It could be cool or hot water, like higher temperature or lower, but a good warm up is needed. Your body will slowly and steadily adapt to the new temperature. So it may happen that first few days you may not be used to training in extreme weathers, but eventually, like your body will get adapted. Should a 13 to 14-year-old do proper weight training? Yes, definitely. Like I explained, formal weight training program can be started as early as 5 years. It completely depends from athletes to athletes whether to do a proper weight training. Like 13 to 14 is a good age to start with, like a formal. In fact, weightlifting also apart from body weight. But I would still say that it depends from athlete to athlete. Some athletes are late maturers, and for them, body weight may be best suited. Likewise, in 12, it completely depends. Most of the athletes are mostly ready by 10 years, as early as 10 years also. Any more questions? Good question is there should be a 6 hour gap in cardio and strength training. Which one should we do first? Yes, the strength training should be done first, followed by cardio training. It's like strength training should be done in a less fatigue state because it's not something which are used to like strength and power based. Basically, if you're going to lift heavy, like swimming demands more of focused based strength. Like you need to focus more on strength and power based training. For that, you need to do that in unfatigued state. So I would suggest you to incorporate strength training first, followed by cardio. How long a child should do cycling? 30 minutes to 45 minutes during this period. Now, like because there's currently lockdown period, yes, you can do 30 to 45 minutes of cardio, which is completely fine. But this is like it how much cardio you should be doing will depend upon your training block. Currently, yes, 30 to 45 minutes is good for doing cardio. Which kind of training should we do as a swimmer? Like I said, it depends actually whether you are a sprinter or a long distance. The focus is more regardless. The focus is more on strength and power building because you don't achieve that in pull based training. You already work a lot upon endurance training in the pool. So your focus is to build power and strength. And specifically, if you are a sprinter, you need to work a lot more upon strength and power compared to long distance, where you may divide it a little bit with endurance. In which long distance swimmer need to focus on core or running or weight training to strengthen? If you're a long distance swimmer, already you are doing a lot of, there is high volume of, compared to a sprinter, the volume of swimming in a long distance swimmer is already high. So I would, unless your focus is weight loss or anything, like I would suggest you to focus more on weight training and core training rather than doing running, specifically if you are into full training block.